Okay, so questions, comments? I'd like to thank everyone for being patient through there. Okay, I just got to find where's stop share. There we go.
Okay.
So we still have people left. Not everybody went to sleep.
That was quite in depth there, indeed. Thank you, Daryl. That's quite a bunch of information, but I certainly learned a lot that I did not know about Raspberry Pi. So we'll open up the floor if anybody's got questions for Daryl or any comments or something you're not sure of, or it's a wealth of information.
I have a question for Daryl. Alan, it's John from Southern Ontario. Daryl, are you available to design and put a program together? I'm trying to do a magnetic loop, and I'm trying to tune a variable capacitor, and I'd like to do it with a stepper motor and control it with my Android phone. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. The only problem is right now I don't have time on my calendar at the current moment for that. Okay. Things that I have on my plate right now is I have another presentation I got to get together that I've been putting off on safety code 6, because that seems to be a bit of a void right now. Is for amateurs to have familiarity with safety code 6, which is what it is our radiation exposure levels to keep people safe from our antennas. And some of it's easier than you think for that, but to understand it, they sort of had the older version was a little bit more explanatory because they included a graph there, which I'll redo. But in the new one, they just give you the numbers and let your brain run with it. Well, it's safety code 6 is easier to see than it is to try and get out of a formula. So I want to do a presentation on that. The other thing is one of the guys that I think is a member of your club is Grant, or Graham, should say.
Yes.
In Australia.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things I've been doing, not daily with him, but I keep in touch every, I don't know, at least once a week, I guess is what it's been, is something that I think is also important to amateur radio, especially for people like Robert, which is down in your zone as well. Oh, excuse me, talking along. So anyway, his project is remote operation of radios. That in his case, it's not specific to an ICOM that has a software out there. It's operation for almost any radio. And he has the majority of it working using a ham pie. I forget the exact name of it. I think it's Hampire or something like that, but it's a predecessor that is used. And anyway, it allows operation of almost any radio. He's identified some deficiencies with the audio, because if you don't know when you can safely key the radio in that, it's a problem, right? So he wants to have a second audio line. So I was looking at what can we do to have a second audio line in there so you can monitor what's going on while it's also being used. So I'm looking at different things for that. So
that's fine. So when you get a free moment, I'll get in touch with you.
Okay, but I can definitely don't forget about me. Like when there'll be time coming up. It's just that I want to try a couple of things, because that might be easy to do, what he's wanting to do.
Okay.
And Asterisk might be the way to do it, but Asterisk seems like overkill.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, okay. And in chat, I think there was something there. I don't have Facebook, Lou, to post this, but I can drop it in the, I can definitely give it to you right now by putting it in the message box. Okay, but I don't have Facebook, and to send
Okay,
it, it's
Daryl.
too big.
Yeah, no
It's
problem
too
there.
big to actually.
Thanks, Daryl. That was quite a presentation. Appreciate that. I got to get on with making my applesauce here and stuff like that. Everything's ready to go. So
Okay.
that was quite a, but that's a mind-boggling.
I when I was building it, I'm thinking that at the end of it, I wanted to put something in there where, like, examples of where people use it. But I put the links, you know, for amateur radio. For if anybody has better links, then I can always update that slide, of course. If anybody has seen a mistake or something, let me know. I can fix it. Anything I missed, put it in. But I thought to include the pins, and so that people have an understand what it's capable of doing, even though it's not doing it for them right now. But those that wanted to do certain functions could know that, oh, it can do that. I can control relays. A relay, I can control a motor that takes up, you know, it might take 20 amps to power that motor. Well, my Raspberry Pi can't draw 20 amps, but I can control something that can, you know. So I wanted to make people aware of those types of things, you know. I don't hear you, but I see your thumbs up. Okay, Lou, that file is uploading right now. So it'll just take a few minutes there for it to upload.
Excellent, Daryl. Thank you so much.
Anybody that wants it, just save it when you see it come up on in the chat. So I take it
Sorry.
I take it our other presenter didn't.
Never showed up throughout the presentation there, so not sure what happened. I'll email him back and you know, tell him thank you, but no thank you. It you know, unless he confirms this is twice now that you know, he backed out with the Sudbury Club and backed out with ours. So I mean, I'm not going to go prancing after him. It is unfortunate, but he's probably very busy and took on more than he could probably chew, and you know, with it. But it you know, it is discouraging because people were kind of looking forward to it and that with it. So we'll see what happens anyway. But thank you, Daryl, for stepping in at the last moment. That was excellent. And I know it's a lot of information to cover there, but you were very thorough. And, you know, if nobody knew anything about Raspberry Pis before, they're certainly watching your presentation and getting a better understanding on how the whole concept works and the different types, and then of course the applications too, right? I mean, everybody understands the hotspot with the Raspberry Pi, but what the pins do and the ins and outs and the different functions, I mean, that's all important with it, right? And then, you know, other people jumping in there like Tom with doing the ham clock and introducing us to that. And you did the ham pie with all those different applications. So, you know, it's part of our, definitely part of our amateur stuff, and everybody's got a Raspberry Pi kicking around, you know, whatever you want to do with it. And, you know, you even mentioned, I've got a couple of, let me just mute this here. Hang on.
Yeah.
Here's my list here. There we go. in relation to, you were mentioning what's becoming very popular now in a lot of shacks, and where the hell did I put them? I must have put them.
I have a question for Daryl while you're looking for what you want to ask him.
Yeah.
Um, Daryl, you did mention the 4B 8 gig and the 4B 1 gig. Can you get a 4B, like say 2 or 3 or 4 gig rather than either or?
The easy way to remember what they come in, I only listed the first one and the last one. They come in ones, double it comes in twos, double it comes in fours,
Okay.
and double it comes in eights.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as you increase the gigabytes, there would be a price variance in the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that even though memory is really cheap now, that they still tend to want to get a lot of money out of us when we can't plug it on the board ourselves.
Okay.
You know, if they had a SIM socket on the Raspberry Pi where we could expand the memory ourselves, it would be a different story. But in this case, it's soldered right on the board.
If I was to get a 4B, would, let's say, a 2 gigabytes be sufficient, or for the average Joe?
It depends what you're doing with it. If you're going to be doing something that's very demanding, then you want more RAM. But if you're not doing things that are very demanding, the 2 or 4.
Well, I'm seeing the more,
it's extremely light, then I would just go with the 1.
I'm seeing the more RAM that's demanding, the more you're going to be demanding on the CPU also. So yeah, you're going to start, one without the other one doesn't really, I don't know, work properly.
Yeah, but in this case, they've already increased the power of the CPU
Okay.
and still allow it to be like a 1 gig card, right?
Okay.
If you're just running ham clock doesn't take anything hard to run, so you don't need it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you have something very demanding, I'm trying to think what would be really demanding, for our applications, that you'd need more than 2 or 4.
Yeah. I was
you could do it
looking
the other
at
way. You could do it the other way, like a 1 gig card, I think was like under $50, and an 8 gig was over $108 or something.
Yeah.
So you could say, okay, do I want to spend $108 not knowing if it's strong enough, but I'm going to buy more Raspberry Pis, or you could say, okay, I'm just going to buy the latest model, but the least amount of RAM, or less RAM. And if it's not strong enough, then I know I have to buy another Raspberry Pi, and I'll use this one for this other project. There's different ways of thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I ran. One of the things I did was there's this application out there to run on Raspberry Pis. It's called Midas, like the muffler shop. Okay.
Yeah.
And their website is MID.AS. That's the way they wanted their website called, right? If anybody was interested in what it does. So on that particular thing, they didn't say it would run on a Raspberry Pi, okay? But they did say it was Linux. Okay, you can run it on Linux.
Okay.
So I took a Raspberry Pi 4, 4 meg, I believe I got for it, 4 meg card. And on it, I put the basic operating system. Then I had to put that I want to be a web server, so I had to put Apache. And then I had to say that I want a database, so I had to put a SQL type database on it, which is called MariaDB. Okay, very powerful. Okay, and then I had to put secure, because their website insists that anytime you use their product, because they like money, right? Anytime you go into their product, you know that you're not running it on more than 2 machines, one being your primary and the other one being your test bed, as they call it. You have to have an internet connection, so that has to be secure. So I had to put secure web server on it. And then I had to put their application on top of it that runs out of, runs fine. It's a database app that would be more demanding because it's SQL type. You can search in a split second, and when you get the fast searches that are done, that takes a little bit of resources. It all runs fine. It runs perfect. It's
Okay, you've
now
basically
setting it
answered,
up.
basically answered my question. I think I'm gonna get a 4 gigabyte.
4 is sort of in the middle, and it seems
Yeah,
like an all
yeah.
around, right?
I think that's the way to go.
And another way that I try and figure out, is it good enough or not? I have a 3B, right? 3B plus.
Yeah,
And it only has 1 gig, right? Does it run all right? Okay, I definitely don't need anything stronger in a version 4. You know, but it's easier when you have more than one. I know that. But if you only have one, probably a 4B with 4 gig is probably going to make you happy for everything. I didn't say anything about memory, did I, in that presentation? Other than you need it.
yeah.
Okay,
No, you talked about the from 1 to 8 gigabytes and
that's RAM.
and yeah, RAM.
Yep, that's RAM. But I'm talking about SD card memory.
Oh, the SD card. Oh, yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
would think a 32 or a 64 would be more than adequate.
Okay, so here's the scoop on what I could find out about memory. Okay, when I say memory, I mean the SD card
Yeah, the SD card.
memory in this case. Okay, SD card. In order to load these operating systems, you need at least 8 to load the light versions, is what they're recommending. You need at least 16 gigabyte to run the GUI version. That's the graphical one that everybody likes looking at now, you know, with the little windows and stuff. Okay.
Yes.
Because you don't have to type as many commands that way. And what is the command if you do have to type it, right?
Well,
So
GUI
you can
seems to
click
be
on
the
something.
system preferable right now, I think.
Yeah. And you don't have to type out a file path this long. You just click on the file, right? And it takes you there. So that file finished uploading there, Lou. Okay. So they recommend a minimum of 16 gig for the GUI version. Okay. And then you say, okay, so bigger's better. So with the new 4B out there, what I could find on it, they still recommend not the 64, the 32. Okay. Because the reason they recommend the 32 gig card is Raspberry Pi uses FAT, file allocation table. If you're familiar with that, that's what Windows uses. Okay? And FAT maximum file size or maximum hard drive size is 32 gig.
Okay.
So
And
can you use the bigger ones? Yes, but now they're going to partition them. So is what they're saying. So can you buy, I would say, don't spend the extra money on the bigger drives right now. You're better off like
what are 32?
a 16 or a 32. Don't go smaller than a 16.
Yeah.
And if the bigger than a 32 is a really, really good price for a bunch of them, then I would say, yeah, sure. But just because it's bigger, don't think it's going to be that much better. Now, having said all that, it doesn't mean there's not going to be something out there that's going to say that I'm going to use more than that amount of space, and it's already going to configure your micro SD to be able to use those. It doesn't mean that in the future that they're going to start, maybe they're going to start recognizing, what's the other name? It's not FAT. I forget the other Windows names. The file allocation tables. They have
UTF-S.
That's it. Okay.
Which would be,
FTFS. Yeah, FTFS. Maybe they're going to put that into Linux, right? Into the Raspberry Pi version of Linux. I don't know. Are you going to fill it? Anybody can fill memory if they want to. Is he going now? Yeah. So So right now, the 16 and 32s are cheap. You know, oh, there's a 0,
And kit.
the Raspberry Pi 0 being held up, yeah. So does that help you at all?
Yeah, I think that's the 32. I'm gonna go with a 32. I'm in the US and there's pretty good pricing right now on the cards. So
Okay, so having said that, if they had 16s out there, 16 gig, and you had an image of a 16 gig Linux machine,
yeah,
and you decide that you want to take that image and put it on a 32 gig because you just came across some 32s and the 16 was full. So if you backed it up, and the ones to back it up with, as long as they're not bigger than a 32 gig card, okay, is you can back it up using Win32 Imager,
yes,
okay, or what people are moving towards now is Escher, okay, because Escher can back up an SD card that is bigger than 32 gig.
we'll go up to
Okay.
128.
So that doesn't mean your Raspberry Pi still doesn't have to be partitioned properly to understand what it needs, right? It just means that if you did have multi-partitions, it can back it up. Okay. Now, having said that, if you back up something and you create an image and and you save it to your hard drive on your Windows computer, for example, you could go into the Raspberry Pi Imager or Escher, or if it's under 32 gig, you can use Win32 Imager and restore it. So if it was a 16 gig image and you restored it to a 32 gig image, okay, that's acceptable because the first time you plug it in your Raspberry Pi, the Raspberry Pi on first boot will look at it and say, oh, I got a 16-bit image, but I'm 32 gig big. So one of the things you'll see flash in front of you is reconfiguring for that memory card so that it takes advantage of the 32 gig, even if it was a 16
Will
gig.
it partition the 32?
It'll
or will it-
repartition it to 32 instead of keeping 16.
Okay.
Yeah. It's smart enough to do that.
Okay.
The other thing that's new, one thing that's new for the Raspberry Pi 4 is you can take a Raspberry Pi, the way I told you to do the image works for everybody, all the Raspberry Pis. Raspberry Pi 4 brand new beta testing right now is you can go to the Raspberry Pi site for the Imager download link I gave you, and you can go in there and download an image that's a trial image and write it to your Raspberry 4B firmware. And then once it has the new firmware, you could take your Raspberry Pi, plug an empty SD card into it, micro SD card into it, and power it up. And it'll say, I don't have a Raspberry Pi operating system. So it's going to force the Raspberry Pi Imager in your face. So you can download without having to go through Windows. Okay, but that's brand new and only if you do the firmware change while it's in beta.
So you'd have to download the updated firmware on it though.
Yeah, now maybe new ones are going to have it out after the beta testing's done, right?
Okay.
Then all Raspberry Pi 4s and on will have that. But it's only Raspberry Pi 4 that they say it works with.
Okay, and how would you know which firmware is on the Raspberry Pi 4 when you purchase it? How would you know it's beta or it's what's that?
Only by powering it up.
Okay. Okay.
But the easiest way is just use Windows Computer and just do it. Just do your image. You plug like the instructions I gave.
Yeah.
You take your SD card, plug it in a computer. You run the imager on your computer. Okay. You pick off the menu what operating system you want. usually the first one is the one you want, okay? Unless you're doing something else like retro gaming or
No.
Ubuntu or, yeah. So it's usually the first one. Even though it's 32-bit, most of the stuff out there's 32-bit. You could drop down to the 64-bit one if you wanted. 32-bit stuff will run on a 64-bit machine. I haven't seen any where it won't, but it won't do it the other way.
No, it won't.
Okay.
No, it's not. It'll do 32 on 64. No issue. No issues.
And then once it's done, making your image on that SD card, plug it in your Raspberry Pi, and then just follow the instructions as they come up. Okay, it's fairly easy to get to. And all Raspberry Pis are treated the same, except for the Pico. Okay, the Pico is not a computer, it's a microcontroller.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Well, guys, I gotta go, so I'm gonna go ahead and say 73. I got somebody showing up here shortly with some iPad, iPod, tablet, Facebook issues, so.
Okay, thanks, Rusty.
Okay, well, and that was a lot of information there, Daryl. Sorry I was popping in and out and gone and everything, but it was a fantastic presentation. Thank you. very
I
much.
just seen people that were saying bye.
Yeah,
Those are the ones that I was thinking, oh, they might have had a question. I'd go and check, but
right.
yeah, it's a longer presentation, but I think it covers.
Well, now I
you don't
know.
have to know how to do a sensor if you're going to plug a hat on the board or you're
There you
following
go.
someone else's project.
There you go. Okay, 73, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Okay. Bye, Rusty. Well, now I know the go-to guy for Pi anyways.
I'll pass it back to Al there.
Yeah.
Oh, no problem. No, if there's more questions, absolutely. No, what I was going to say earlier is, the majority of hotspots use the Pi-Star image, which is about 4 gigs. But I put a minimum of a 16 gig card. It's hard to get smaller cards now. You go to unless you order them off the internet, but you go to any store out there, Walmart or, you name it, and try and look for an 8 gig card or something. You can't find them 4 or 8 gig cards.
I'm seeing the norm here in Arizona, 32 gigs.
Yeah, 32 is the norm. You go to Best Buy or you go to the Source or you got to go, Janice? Or are you waving? Sorry, you're muted. No, can't hear you, Janice. You're muted.
Blame it on the parrot, okay?
Mm-hmm.
No, I was just talking to Tom. We were talking because I had.
Oh, you guys were on the phone with one another. Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, come on.
So I sold it to him, and then I can go buy a cheaper one that is a little easier to work with.
Okay, very
It
good.
was just a user error, right? Like, blame it on this one. It's all the parrot's fault.
There you go. That's all right, Kelly. We back you up. But
All right.
yeah, no, the image, like you're saying, it doesn't hurt to have a little bigger card. So what I do is I go on Amazon, and where is it? Over here, I think. You can get them pretty cheap. So what I do is I order a whole bunch of and keep them.
$8 for this 32 right now.
Yeah, so I order a whole bunch of them, and they come in, and they average about $5 a thing, and they're 16 gigs in the high speed ultra.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm
so
ahead
they
of you.
would,
I already bought 4.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
I've got plenty of BSD cards. It's the actual Pi card. I bought the Pi Zero kit from Canakit, and it was different from the bigger Pis, and it looked like it'd be more complicated to set up. And I am such a bonehead. I really need like stupid level stuff, or yeah, something for kindergarten would be good. I could put it together. But anyway,
Well, that's the thing, like, you know, CanaKit, they're pretty good. Like you showed one here. I've got a, you know, a box full of, and Daryl's quite right when in his presentation, you gotta look on what they're sending you, you know, an HDMI cable, card reader,
didn't know what I
cases,
needed exactly.
power supplies, the whole 9 yards, right? Like I've
Yeah,
got,
it was,
I've got cases coming out of my yin yang here.
yeah, I
You
didn't
know,
know what I needed. That was the problem.